A very good morning. Welcome all for day 5 and the first session in this innovative teaching learning methods organized by VPKBIT Baramati under the noble guidance of AICTE and IST. I take here an opportunity to introduce our guest, Professor Basavaraj Huli sir, who is going to give expert talk on learning experience design. I introduce sir briefly. Basavaraj Huli sir is a strong technology professional and a telecom domain specialist with more than 30 years of diverse experience in industry, startups, entrepreneurship, and research. His company, Opt AIoT Private Limited, is in the field of accelerating digital convergence using cognitive networks IoT framework. He is part of CDAC team that is working in the area of emerging technologies and e-governance standards. He is trained by UC Berkeley, has School of Business on Entrepreneurship and Design Thinking. He conducts design thinking programs to corporates and colleges during his free time. About affiliation, he is Managing Director, Opt AIoT Private Limited, also Founder Director, Graceful Growth Consulting India Private Limited, and also the consultant, CDAC, Center for Development of Advanced Computing, the scientific society of the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Government of India. With this brief introduction, I welcome sir and request to guide the participants. Sir, you can share this.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So let me share the screen.
Yes, sir, you can.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, it is
So
visible.
can
Sir.
you see my
Yes, sir, it is visible.
screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, the participants, I think you will not mind if the participants will like to interact you at any time.
No
Verbally also.
problem. Not a problem.
So the participant just can
Actually, the
unmute
way.
themselves and have a talk with you.
Yes, yes. What we will do is, after every 5-10 minutes, I'll pause for a moment, and then people can ask some questions, because then by that what happens is, in case if there are any queries, and probably if they can be sorted out in that 10-15 minutes, then fine. If not, then when we pause, maybe that's the time we can have certain interactions. Is that okay, sir?
Fine, sir, fine. Okay. Sir, you have unmuted yourself. Huli, sir. Huli, sir, please unmute yourself.
Sir, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, but the screen is not visible now.
One second. Let me just connect. Is it visible now?
Yes, visible, sir.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Please.
I'm on. So it is visible right now?
Yes, sir, visible. Yes, please.
Okay, okay, sorry. So what I was trying to tell was, see, we will pause after every 10-15 minutes,
Your
and
voice
then
is very low, sir.
during that time we can have certain interactions.
Sir,
It is low.
voice is very low.
1 second, sir. So how is it now?
Yeah, yes, better, sir. Please.
Better. Okay, so it is fine, right?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay. Yeah, so the screen is visible now.
Yes, sir, yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir, it is visible. Learning experience design and
Okay.
introduction.
Correct. Yeah. I don't know. Somehow, I'm not sure if my link is proper because see, last time I think we had good communication, but somehow today I don't know why we are getting disconnected. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir, yes.
Sir, is it okay?
Yes, sir, fine.
Hello. Okay. Yes. So what you can do is, in case if I am disconnected or something, please let me know. Let me do one thing, sir. Let me connect through another network because I think there is some issue. Give me 2 minutes. I'll connect again. So just give me a minute. I will reconnect.
Yes,
No
sir.
problem, sir. No problem. If you reconnect, then it will be better.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'll try and do. So can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me, sir, now?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yes, sir. It is better.
So it's better, right? It's clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, clear.
Okay, so that now, okay. Sorry for this, disturbance. So what we will be doing is essentially we will try and answer the questions in between. That is, we'll pause after about 5-10 minutes, and then we will take those questions. So let me start. I hope the connection is all right now.
Yes, sir.
Sir, is the connection all right?
Yes, sir. It's nice now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Uli, sir, please carry on. I think he has disconnected.
Sir is in the meeting, sir.
Okay. Okay. Sir, unmute yourself.
So can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Now?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir. Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
So it's clear?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, let me
Share your
just,
screen, sir. The screen.
You will have to
Yeah.
share screen.
yeah, I'll do that. So can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir. We can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So there is no problem, right? Absolutely.
No, no.
Yes, sir. No problem. Sir.
So now it is clear. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry for this technical problem. In fact, I'm a telecom person, but unfortunately, we won't be able to do much as far as the connectivity is concerned. So, in spite of having a good broadband connection and all that, we have these problems. Yeah. So you can hear me well, right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so we will, without wasting time, let's start. What I'm going to be talking today is about learning experience design. So now, when we say learning experience design, it's basically an introduction that I am giving because typically it's a kind of 4-5 days program that I conduct and which I have done for several colleges. So what I'll do is I'll just give a gist of what it means and what it is. In this hour and a half. So now, basically, what we are trying to do when we say learning experience design is achieving the expectations of the learner. There are certain expectations of the learner. Now, basically, when we talk about an experience, experience, when we say it is more to do with the emotions, it is more to do with the connectivity. So when I am sitting for a class, do I connect with the class? Do I connect with the teacher? So when we say a good experience for a learner, what learner is trying to do or what learner is trying to achieve is, he wants to be emotionally connected because, he knows that he's getting what he wants. So that is what we call it as an experience. So now, how do we design such an experience? So am I audible and clear now?
Yes, sir. You are audible and clear.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So so it is more to do with making sure that the expectations, meaning whatever are the learners' expectations, are actually achieved, by whatever we provide. Like for example, we talk about a curriculum design, or we talk about a course design, or we talk about an environment for learning, right? So now all those things are part of the learning ecosystem. So now what is important for us is to make sure that this learning ecosystem is designed in such a way that it achieves or it actually satisfies the expectations of the learner. Now, if you see, now what has happened is the expectations of the learner are changing. During our time, that is say about 10-15 years back, what used to happen was it is the colleges which were dictating what the learner would become. Like for example, if you teach, he would join say mechanical engineering branch in your college, and you have a curriculum for mechanical engineering, and then essentially what has happened is when he enters, he has defined what he wants to be. So he wants to be a mechanical engineer, so that is what has already been defined and decided. And also what has happened is, you are trying to mold based on that expectation. So that is what was the past. Now, present, see what happens is, when a learner, when he is joining a college today, the expectations are slightly different from what it used to be, say, 10 years back. The expectations are that he wants to, do something. Ultimately, he may want to do a job, or he may want to, make his living, earn certain, livelihood, right? So basically, that is his final goal. And for doing that, he has to do certain things. So now, what has happened is, see, the kind of problems that an engineer is supposed to be solving are going to be very different from typical verticalization that we used to have in early days. That was about 5-10 years back. That is, a mechanical engineer's problems were fixed, and electronics engineer's problems were fixed, right? So now, see, now for an engineer, he has to be interdisciplinary. Like, for example, if he wants to be a data scientist today, which is becoming a very hot field, naturally, he has to be a mathematician, he has to be a programmer. So, he has to have the knowledge of mathematics, he has to have the knowledge of programming, and, he has to have a knowledge of the domain in which he's supposed to be working. So that means three things. That is the domain, the mathematical background, and the programming background. So now, if he wants to do an analytics for, say, a smart factory, or if he wants to design a smart factory, for example, then he has to have he has to be in a manufacturing domain, and he has to be a software engineer, and he also has to be a mathematician. So which means that, see, he wants to define what he wants to be. And then he wants to decide his own, things that he wants to learn. So now, how the new ecosystem can provide that, so that is what is going to be the, change. So now, because of this change, because of the expectations are changing, and the expectations are supposed to be met by the ecosystem, the learning ecosystem. And how do we design that learning ecosystem is what we would essentially be talking about. So the agenda for the program today is, I'm trying to divide this into three parts. First is, I'll be setting up a context. I'll be setting up a context as to why we are talking about what is called as learning experience design, and what is learning experience design actually means. And, why are we talking about it today? So why are we talking about it today? And, how technology is disrupting and getting us into what is called as a new normal. So that is what I would be doing. So that is the first part. And then the second part is, of course, we have to adapt digital technology. So how do we transform our ecosystem, the existing ecosystem of education, into becoming more digital? And when we say we need to transform, it's more of a paradigm shift. So now, how do we try and achieve that? Like, what are the mindful principles in order to achieve that? And so now, when we talk about these transformation projects, see, these transformation projects, when we talk about, they are programs. Actually, they are not projects themselves. They are the entire programs. And the programs will have several projects, and the several projects will have several problems. So now what is important is then how do we actually plan that entire program, and then how do we achieve the projects, and how do we understand the problem. In the problem domain, that is basically, we'll talk about what is called as reframing, because many a times what we do, in fact, all our curriculums today's curriculums, every curriculum today that we have, what is happening is, we only teach how to solve a problem. So which means that there is an assumption that the problem has been already defined and you are supposed to be solving that problem. So, we actually mold or build our students for problem solving. But we have never done a good job of making them, people who can actually identify the problem. So, identify or reframing of a problem and trying to find out what is the best problem to solve in the context to achieve the same thing. So to achieve the same thing, the goal is going to be the same. So in order to achieve the same goal, what is the better problem to solve? So how do you look from that point of view? Rather than just, if somebody tells that this is a problem, you suddenly get into solving that problem. So now instead of that, can we spend little time in the problem domain itself? So that is what we would be briefly touching upon. So this is what is going to be an agenda. And of course, the takeaway for you would be, how do we use these mindful principles for any transformation project? So basically digital transformation, that is, the education is also going to be more digital. Why it is going to be during the context setting, I'll tell you about that. So then, how do we apply, what are called as mindful principles for this transformation projects or transformation programs? So that is what we essentially will be talking about. So I hope, the voice is clear and then there are no disturbances, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so now, to set the context, recently you saw this acquisition of Akash, which was, there used to be those IIT JEE classes, this was a chain of classes that was acquired by Byju's. And what was Byju's doing? Byju's was essentially just, developing certain, learning modules or videos, learning through a video. So
Sir, your voice is breaking, sir.
They were trying to do, and it's still breaking now.
Sorry, please,
So
sir.
let me connect through another network. 1 second, sir. Let me connect through another network. So it is still a problem.
Not now, sir.
So it's clear now.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So it's clear right now.
Sir, clear. Please.
The voice is clear.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. What I was talking about is the Byju's acquiring Akash. Now, Byju's was just doing this, developing these videos for children to learn. So it was more of video-based learning. And why they had to acquire? They acquired for $1 billion, and then why they had to acquire Akash was because See, you can't learn things only by looking at the videos. So you have to create an ecosystem. And that ecosystem is not just, it cannot just be by, the learning cannot happen individually. The learning will have to happen, through collaboration. The learning has to happen through peers. And the learning will happen, by kind of blended learning. That is, you need to have some kind of a classroom teaching. You need to have, other modes, and then you can also have, like for example, conducting labs and all that. And so there are certain things, which you have to really do in, in real time. So now. How do we connect all that? And how do we build that ecosystem? So basically, this acquisition happened because of creating that ecosystem. So the ecosystem had to be created. And if you see the advertisements of Byju's, you will see that they are trying to insist that the parents become partners. So which means that the learning has to happen with somebody else also. So it is more of an ecosystem that is getting created. So slowly what is going to happen is the way the learning happens is going to change. So the digital world is going to actually have a major impact on the way the learning happens. And that is going to change the way the learners are going to, learn certain things based on what they want to learn. So, so now because the digital technology is providing certain flexibility, the digital technology is providing certain flexibility, and then because of the flexibility that it is providing, the expectations of the learner are also changing. So now because of that, we are getting into a new kind of an ecosystem. So any questions till now? So any questions?
No, sir.
But is the voice clear, or it is still a problem?
It is clear now, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So now let me get on to learning experience design, what it means. So learning experience design is a science and art of creating experiences that will help learner to fulfill the learning outcomes that they desire in a more user-centered and goal-directed way. So now when I say user-centered, it means that it is student-centered. That is one. And when we say goal-directed, it is a student who wants to achieve certain things. So now, is your ecosystem providing that, setup so that, the expectations of the learner are fulfilled. So that is what is in ecosystem design that we are talking about. So basically, we are supposed to be designing. Now, when I say design, I'm essentially talking about, say today, when you talk about an education system, that has been designed by somebody, it has come over a period of time, right? So now, and then what we are trying to do is we are trying to use that and then, trying to build our students. So that is what the whole, the design is. Now, because of the technology, the whole ecosystem of learning, what I'm trying to say is going to be changing. And now what is important for us is how do we build that? How do we think about that? So what is that, we need to have? So what is our end goal? So that is what is going to be a critical thing. So it is more about what is called as, designing an ecosystem for learning, which will achieve the expectations of the learner in a more user-centered way and in a more goal-directed way. That is what we are calling it as learning experience design. Now, if you want to do this learning experience design, what is important is that you need to understand what is called as design thinking. So basically what we are trying to do here is, we are trying to change our whole thinking methodology, because we are now supposed to be thinking out of the box. So now how do we think out of the box in order to create a new ecosystem? Because with the same thinking, we will not be able to create a different thing. So we have to have a different thinking in order to create something very different. So now how do we get onto that different thinking? So now there are frameworks for making you to think different, and that is design thinking. So how do you adapt design thinking in order to create a learning experience? So that is what is going to be the key. I won't be getting into the details of design thinking because it's a complete program by itself. But what is important for you people is, you can always Google for design thinking and then find out more about it. And design thinking has become very critical in the today's setup. The reason why it has become very critical in today's setup is because of the complexities that we are seeing today. So that is why, whether we like it or not, we have to start adapting a different way of thinking. And one of the methodology or one of the framework for that is design thinking, and which has become very popular. And then I'm sure, many of you would be already aware of it. If you're not, please look at it and also try and see if you can master that. So now, see, why are we talking about all these things today is basically because, we have got into what is called as an experience economy. We are into something called as an experience economy. What is meant by an experience economy? Let me just explain you what is experience economy. And then, based on that, let me get back to, our, experience design part. See, if you look at this particular picture here, you will see that in the agriculture age, it was the coffee beans which was sold. So now the progression of economic value, how the economy has progressed over a period of time. Now taking the example of coffee. So during the agriculture economy, it was the coffee beans which were sold. Then in the industrial economy, it was the coffee powder which was sold. So, that became the product. Then, then we move to what is called as a service economy. In the service economy, it is the coffee which is sold. Now we have moved to what is called as an experience economy. So in the experience economy, it is not just the coffee, it is the whole ecosystem or an environment that is being sold. Like, for example, when you talk about Cafe Coffee Day, in Cafe Coffee Day, you go to Cafe Coffee Day, not just for having coffee, but you go to Cafe Coffee Day for the complete experience of it. Now, what is an experience of it? Like, for example, the youngsters will go to Cafe Coffee Day because they can go and hang out there. Nobody stops them. They can go sit there, have fun, chit chat, spend a lot of time. Nobody is going to, disturb them. But you cannot do the same thing when you go to a Udupi hotel. Like, as soon as you order for a coffee, your coffee comes, and then as soon as you have the coffee, you are, because next customer is waiting, and then you are supposed to be moving out. So that is just the service economy. So in the experience economy, you give the complete environment, and that environment, the experience is always personal. So now Cafe Coffee Day gives the experience for the youngsters or even for the business people. Like, for example, you want to go and then spend some time, send mails, receive mails, and then have a meeting. You go to Cafe Coffee Day, you get an internet access, you get a Wi-Fi, then you connect, you send mail, receive mails. You can do everything there, and then call somebody, have a meeting there. You can do everything. So it's an environment. Now that environment doesn't come free. So they will charge you, say, 200 rupees for the coffee. So it's not for the coffee that you have been paying, but it is for the experience of it that you are paying. A lot can happen over the coffee is what you are paying for. So that is what is experience economy. So now education as a service, so earlier we used to talk about education as a service. Now you have to move from education as a service to education as an experience. So you have to move from education as a service to education as an experience. Now experience for whom and experience how, so that is what you need to be really looking at. And now in order to provide that experience, in order to design that experience, or in order to design that experience in the sense, in order to design that what is called as ecosystem, you should at least have, two habits of the 7 habits of highly effective people inculcated in you. So if I ask a question as to how many people have read this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, can somebody tell me if you have read it? Anybody who has read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Hello? Hello, Emma. Yes. Just wanted to check if somebody has read this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, so the reason of asking question is to, check that also. So anybody has read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
No, sir.
If nobody has read, please, you may want to go to the, you can just buy it online now. So go on to Amazon and then maybe you can, order for this book. This one book which I think you should have. Okay, so see, there are 7 habits to be an effective person. That is what Stephen Covey talks about. And he talks about what is called as principle-centered leadership and all that. Let me not get into it. So now, in order to design an ecosystem, at least you should have 2 habits of those 7 habits. So now the 2 habits that you should inculcate is begin with the end in mind. So what it means is that what you want to build. So what is the kind of an ecosystem that you want to build? What is a kind of an learning ecosystem? So when you want to build a learning ecosystem, what should be your end goal? What is that? You should actually visualize the end goal, or you should be able to visualize the ecosystem that you think should be there, which combines probably the classroom teaching, it combines the digital teaching, it combines a lot of other digital systems, so using all that, what is the kind of end ecosystem that you would want to actually visualize? So the vision. So begin with that vision, begin with the end system, right? And in order to that is one part of the story. And the other thing is that you should seek first to understand, in the sense, see what normally we do is, say for example, we are doing this online teaching now, right? So as soon as we got into this pandemic, quickly most of the colleges adapted to what is called as this online learning, online teaching. In fact, it is not learning, it's teaching. So we adapted what is called as online teaching. So now why we adapted this? See, we didn't care what, how would the students experience it. But we wanted to satisfy our need. That is, as a teacher, we were supposed to take say 30 hours or 40 hours of lectures, and then whatever are the requirements. So we wanted to satisfy that. So because we were unable to go to the colleges, because we were unable able to have, you know, face-to-face or a classroom teaching. So we quickly adapted to what is called as online teaching, and then, you know, started doing that. So which essentially means that, you know, we started looking at or satisfying our need. We didn't satisfy the learner's need, you know, we satisfied our need. So now, you know, did we ever check if that is satisfying the learner's needs? You know, I'm sure, you know, we won't have done that, you know. So, you know, it is important for us to understand the expectations of the learner. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. You know, you cannot just, you know, insist or, you know, push certain thing onto the learner. You know, you are supposed to be asking what the learner is wants to learn, or what is that he wants to achieve, because, you know, things are changing. The kind of problems that are being solved are very different today, right? So the industry is expecting that you need to be an interdisciplinary person, right? So now that is how the things are changing. So if a person has to be interdisciplinary, then the ecosystem should provide the learner that flexibility. So can we design that flexible ecosystem? In fact, the new education policy is essentially, you know, trying to get into that. So now what is important is, you know, it is important to really understand if we are providing a value. So can we articulate the value proposition of anything that we do, right? So that is what is going to be a key. That is what is going to be the key to the new ecosystem that we are supposed to be building. So we are moving from what is called as education as a service to learning experience. So any questions till now? Any questions, please?
No, sir, no question.
Okay. Yeah, so coming to the next one, if you see, the technology is eating the world today. So now when I say technology, technology by default is the digital technology. So that is how technology could be anything. But when we say technology today, invariably it is digital technology. Now, if you see the combined market cap of FANGMAN, that is Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and NVIDIA. So if you see the combined market cap of all this, it is $7.6 trillion. And Apple itself is $2 trillion. And the market cap of just these companies is equal to the combined GDP of Japan and India together. So what it means is, we are now moving from what is called as a material-based economy into a knowledge-based economy. So we are moving from a material-based economy to a knowledge-based economy. Examples are, say, Uber, or if you see, say for example, Flipkart. The valuation of Flipkart was higher than Tata Steel. So now, what is that Flipkart has, that makes its valuation much higher than Tata Steel, which actually Tata Steel is something which boasts of, employing so many people and then maintaining the whole city, and then it can show a lot of things. But when it comes to its market cap, it is lower than Flipkart. So what is that Flipkart is boasting about? The Flipkart boasts about what is called as a knowledge. So what sells today is a value. What sells today is a knowledge. Okay, so it's all about knowledge. Like if you really see Facebook, for example. what is Facebook, how is that, Facebook's market cap is much higher, right? So now, that is mainly because, it connects to the people, it has designed to connect with the people, right? So it's all about the emotions, connectivity, and then how by knowledge, right? So basically, we are shifting from what is called as material-based economy to a knowledge-based economy. And that is how the, trend is moving towards. And when we start designing our curriculums also, we need to make sure that this flexibility is available, because things are changing very fast, and then as the things change, there has to be a flexibility in the way the learners are going to learn as well. So that is how the learning ecosystem need to be designed today. Now, let me just talk about the story of demonetization. So the reason I want to talk about that is because the same thing is going to apply to the education. See, now if you see, forget what was the purpose of demonetization and all that. What has been an impact of demonetization? What was the impact of demonetization? The impact of demonetization has been that, the digital payments have become very popular. So that debit cards and credit cards, the use of that has surged. And then mobile wallets, so you use PhonePe, and then you use, all that Google Pay and all that stuff. Right, so you have been using mobile. You are doing mobile payments. Then point of sales devices are increasing. That is, you go to any shop today, you have a point of sales device, or even the sabji wala, he will have a QR code, and then you would be able to kind of pay using your mobile, right? So now, because the payments are becoming, now that is, since the digital payments have been becoming popular, there have been standardizations also. So you got what is called as an UPI standard today, and you also have a QR code standardization. So now, there are because when things start becoming more and more popular, and then when multiple parties start coming into the picture, then the need would be to make sure that they become standard. Now, all these things, yes, okay. During demonetization, there was no cash, and then this was supposed to be there. But even post demonetization, people would like to still pay using, mobiles. They want to do a mobile payment, or they want to do a digital payment only. So there has been a behavioral change. So there is a change in the behavior because of demonetization. Now that change in behavior is forcing the technology to now, start giving better and better experiences. So now what happens is, the way it goes about is, there would be certain, event or certain, certain thing that is happening. And then because of that event, people will start changing, and then that will have an impact on their behavior. And because of the behaviors, the technology will have to start, readjusting itself. So that is what happens. So there is a behavioral change because of demonetization. Now, typically what happens is, whenever there is a technology adoption, see, this is a kind of a curve that any technology adoption happens. So the technology adoption life cycle essentially is that typically, initially, whenever there is a technology trigger, there will be few people who would like to, start experimenting with it. So that is about 2 to 2.5% who are in the who are the innovators. So that is what happens. That's a trigger. Then subsequently, there would be certain early adapters. The early adapters are, the people who would like to adapt to new technology, and that is only about 13.5%. So after this, early adoption, there is what is called as a chasm. So which means that, yeah, in order to get into an early majority, there is always a gap. So what happens is, people, it is either adapted or it is not adapted. So many of the technologies will not survive because of this chasm. Now, if they survive this chasm, then there is an early majority, then there is a late majority, and there are laggards. So this is how the cycle takes place. But why I am bringing this, the events like demonetization, or because of the events like this pandemic and all that, this chasm gets closed. So the technology adoption becomes faster. So the chasm that we talk about gets closed, and the adoption would be much faster because of certain events like the pandemic that we are seeing today and the demonetization that we saw a few years back. Any questions on this, please? Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so let me move to the next. So now what has happened is, because of this pandemic, so pandemic is now forcing us to adapt technology. Now pandemic has got us into what is called as a low touch economy. And the low touch economy is here to stay. Now, whether we like it or not, the things are going to change. Whether we like it or not, the behavior is going to change. Whether we like it or not, the classrooms of the past will no longer be the same. They will be different. Now, what I am saying is, I am not saying that they will not be there. What I am saying is that the probability is that they would come back with a bang. Now, when I say a bang, it means that they will come with a different, altogether a different, look and feel. So that is how the things are going to be changing. So this new economy, or the pandemic, or a new normal. Now we will get into what is called as a new normal. And that new normal is going to be by the pandemic, and because of which the behavioral change that has happened, and because of the behavioral change, the whole ecosystem will change. So it is up to you people to imagine. When I said, begin with the end in mind, why I stated that is basically because you are in that environment. And now, looking at how the things are changing, and looking at, are envisaging what could be the behavior, you should be able to build a new learning ecosystem. So now the new learning ecosystem is going to be characterized by what is called as low touch interactions. Okay, they are going to be characterized by low touch interactions. They will be characterized by health and safety measures, and there are going to be new human behaviors, and there will be a permanent shift in the way the industries. Of course, this is offering an unseen opportunities for the innovators. So now, it is up to you people to start thinking about it. And unless you start, unless you start thinking, somebody else will do that. So there are so many people on the earth, who will do the things. So it is up to us to decide whether we want to be the first movers, or we want to be the innovators, or we want to be the followers. Right. So that is how we need to be really looking at. So the future is going to be shaped by the current crisis. So this is what I was trying to talk about. The future, whatever future, whether it is in education, or whether it is in industry, or whether it is in society, or whether it is in government, everything is going to be shaped by the current crisis. So now I just want to talk about how the future is going to be. So how do we see ourselves, say in say 2050? So that is what I would briefly talk about, and then this is based on the book by a person, a historian known as called Yuval Noah Harari. Yuval Noah Harari is a historian. You can Google his name. So, he has written a couple of books which have become very popular. One book was *Sapiens*, which essentially talked about the history of mankind, and the other one is *Homo Deus*. *Homo Deus* essentially talks about what is in store for us. That is a brief history of tomorrow. So one book was history of yesterday, and another book is history of tomorrow. So that is how he has written these two books. I suggest that you please read these books. They are very important, not because you need to accept what he's trying to say, but it actually at least gives us some other perspective for us, to think. It gives a very, very different perspective for us to think. So that is the reason I suggest that you should read this. Now, this book, I'm not getting into the details of the book, but the gist is that we are moving from what is called as humanism to dataism. So our shift is from what is called as humanism to dataism. So now what I mean by that? See, let me give you an example, and then then tell you what do I mean by that. See, today, for example, when you're going in a car, normally, you are going from your home. Say, take a a place like Bombay or Pune or Bangalore, where the road construction is happening every time, and then you have to travel something like 30-40 kilometers every day in order to reach your office and all that. So take a situation that way. Now imagine a situation. So what is happening is that if you're going to your office from home, and then which is about 30-40 kilometers every day one way, then normally what you do is you go by your gut. Normally what is happening is that it is based on your gut feeling that you know the road, and then you go by that particular gut, and then you exactly remember that road also, and then every day you are taking the same road. So now the decisions of taking a certain path or a certain road is your own feeling, your own gut feeling, or your own emotions. So every decision is based on your emotions. So all the decisions that we take are based on the emotions, our own emotions. Okay. So now this is route that needs to be taken. It is based on what what I feel is the right path. Now imagine that you have a new car, and then it has come with a navigator, and then you have a Google Maps in that, or and then that is actually showing you what path you should take and all that. So what happens is your Google is trying to tell that you should take a different path, but because you are taken the same path every day, you will say that, okay, forget it, because Google might not know, so I know the route, and then let me take the route that I know. So you will do it, and then still you are taking the path that you are taking every day, and then you find that there is a road construction that is happening there. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Was there any disturbance in between?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So so what has happened is your Google Map is trying to tell that you should take a certain route, and then because you have been traveling by a different route every day, you always want to go by the route that you have been taking every day. You don't believe in Google. So one day what happens is there is a road construction that is happening. So then, you start thinking that, oh, Google was right. And then you start following what Google told. That is, from there onwards, you take Google's path. And if this happens 2 or 3 times, then what happens is, instead of you believing your gut, you will start believing what Google is trying to tell you. So now what is happening is for our decisions, it is the data it is the technology which is actually in our decision. It is not our emotions which are going to be influencing the decision, which is going to be influencing the decisions. Now let me give you an example. Let me give you a couple of other examples. In the past, when I went to a doctor, I used to have a family doctor, and then the family doctor used to know my history. And as soon as he saw me, and then he used to do some small checks, and then based on certain clinical history, he used to know what was the problem with me, and then he used to give the medicine. Today, if you go to a doctor, the doctor will ask you to do a lot of tests, because doctor doesn't believe in his assessment about you. He always will believe in the technology and the data that is coming from the technology. That is, he will ask you to do several tests, and then based on that, he will treat you. So what it means is that, instead of the doctors, instead of believing their gut, they are now believing the data. To an extent, there's a Hollywood actress called Angelina Jolie. So Angelina Jolie, she had a history of breast cancer. And history in the sense, she had her parents, and so basically in their family they had a history. So now, because they had a history, this Angelina Jolie went for a test, even though she did not have any problem. She was perfectly all right, and she went for a test. And that test, when she went, then the test said that the probability of her getting a breast cancer is about 87%. So then when she said that, when she saw that, even though she was not having cancer, even though she was not having that breast cancer, she underwent surgery. Because she didn't believe her own feelings, she believed in the data, and then meaning, of course, at least there was about 10 to 15% of chances that she will not have it. But she didn't believe that, so she believed that she might have it, and then she underwent the surgery. So what is happening is, we are now believing in data more than believing in ourselves. So there is going to be shifting from what is called as the human-centered. One second. A power center is shifting from human feelings to the algorithms. So it is the algorithms which is going to be controlling us going forward. It is the Google which will control us going forward. For example, if I have to give you another example, tomorrow when you want to go and buy a book, see, you might be reading from a Kindle. So when you're reading from a Kindle, when you're reading the book, the Kindle will come with all the technology. So it will measure your blood pressure. It will measure your, because you are reading through that, which one you are reading, your entire emotions, our pulse and, emotions, it will all be gathered by that Kindle. So now, next time when you want to buy a book, and if you go on to Amazon to buy a book, and then if you select a book, the Amazon will tell that, look, forget it, this is not a book for you, because, I know your emotions more than what you know, and you will not like this kind of a horror, book. So you don't read this. So what is going to happen going forward is, it is the algorithms which will start dictating us, and then more than our emotions. So that is what is going to be a shift. So now why I spent little time on this shift is basically because you need to know how the shift is happening, and then based on that you are supposed to be deciding as to what and how we should design our more flexible ecosystem going forward. So now, any questions now, till now? Any questions, please?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Yes. So let me just, what is called as, let me just talk about the learning transformational model. So now, see, basically, what is that we do? Or, what is that we do today, and then what is that we want that it should be done going forward, meaning how our learning system needs to shift. That is what I am just trying to show with the help of this particular picture here. See here, if you see, what has happened is, you have the knowledge. Knowledge is, the various concepts. Say, for example, for example, in mathematics, you teach certain formulas, you teach certain theorems. So all of them, they become, the concepts. So you teach certain concepts, right? So now, a collection of concepts is the knowledge that you have. So, that is what the knowledge is. And then, when you have this concepts, and if there is any problem, then what you do is you try to see if those concepts can be connected in order to come with a solution for the problem. So there is a, say for example, if a mathematical problem is given, what we try and do is we'll try and see if I can use any of the formulas or theorems that we have already studied, and then connect them together in order to solve that particular problem, right? So that is what is intelligence. So the knowledge is having all those concepts, and then intelligence is seeing how I can connect those concepts to solve a specific problem. So up to this we have been doing. So this is what we have been doing. Now what is important for us is, how do I use these concepts, or how do I transfer this into a new situation? Whenever there is a new situation, how do I apply those connections? So can I quickly, apply those new connections to the new environment or a new situation? Now that is what is called as an experience. So what we need to build is an experience. So how we want to build, and what needs to be there in order to build this is what is the problem that we are trying to state in this particular session. That is, how do we design that ecosystem which will help to adapt the concepts that we already have and the intelligence that we have to connect, into transferring them onto a new situation, or pushing them and then extrapolating onto a new situation. Now, why we are insisting that is, this extrapolation can be from one discipline to another discipline as well. So it is the extrapolation, like for example, the way a certain problem is solved in one discipline, can I use this same methodology into another discipline? So that is how we need to be really looking at. So that is the kind of flexibility that we are trying to look at, and then that is how we need to be really looking. So that is what is going to be a requirement in order to build the ecosystem. So I'm just only giving you some of the concepts that you need to have in order to build this ecosystem. So now the learning essentially needs to be contextualized and personalized. So any learning that we are talking about needs to be contextualized and it has to be personalized. It has to be on for a specific context and it has to be personalized. See now, so every learner wants to learn certain thing in a certain context. And he has a way of learning. That is, he wants to learn only at a certain time in the day. And he wants to use videos for learning, or he wants to do certain projects for learning. So he wants to adapt different mechanism. So it could be a video based, or it could be a project based, or it could be by reading a book, or it could be by discussing. So he would want to do it that way. So anytime, anywhere type of learning ecosystem that he is now looking for. So now, if that is the thing, then how do we actually build that? Now, how do we build that is going to be a problem that you people are supposed to be working on. But what is important is, can we separate out? Say, for example, what has happened today is, there is a teacher. It is he learns certain things. So contents are his, and then he goes to the classroom, and then he teaches. So there is a fixed delivery mechanism, and then he's going to teach in the same way to every student. So they have to consume in that particular way, and then there is an assessment. So now this is what is the case. Now, can we separate each of these things? Can we separate the delivery mechanism? Can we separate the contents? Can we separate the way they are consumed and the assessment is being done? Can we separate all of them? And then, the contents could be in any form. The contents need not come from the teacher's head. It can come from various other things. And the delivery mechanism could be anything. It could be a classroom teaching, it could be an online teaching, or it could be through videos, or it could be through any other things, right? So, can we have anytime, anywhere kind of devices? So that the delivery mechanism is done in a certain way, and then the way it is to be consumed. How the learner wants to consume it has to be decided by him. So can he define that? So can the whole system be flexible enough so that he can define the way he wants. So he can configure it or he can adjust it, and then he will decide how he wants to be assessed. So basically, we need to start looking at each piece in the whole system, and then see how each of these things can be now, reframed or relooked at. So that is what we would be essentially looking at. So now, like I said, coronavirus is accelerating the digital strategy formulation in all businesses, including education system. And then transformations are going to be very painful. You will always see that this transformation, any transformation is always very painful. But what is important is, if you don't go through this transformation, you don't have, the pleasure of flying. So if you want to enjoy the pleasure of flying, the people will have to undergo the trouble of, getting converted into a butterfly, right? So educators must pivot to what is called as, they must pivot to a more agile approaches. Okay, and try and see how they can use various ecosystems, or how they can use various platforms in order to build the kind of ecosystem. So actually, I'm just giving you a very high level stuff, but you need to get into the details of each of these things. So when you say digital transformation, it is more than sum of its parts. So it is going to be data driven. And then, it is important that, you need to make sure that your technology adaptation, you actually, go beyond that. You have to make sure that, it's more about transcending the technology and not just adapting the technology. So that is how you need to be really looking at. So now, when you talk about transformation, it is more about when you talk about this digital transformation applied to education as well. You are essentially looking at creating new experiences, that is, new student experiences, improving the efficiencies, and of course, you also have new revenue generations, and of course all that, and then of course, most important is how do you adapt to the changing conditions. So how do you adapt to the changing conditions? So you need to really look at all these aspects when you're talking about digital transformation, or when you talk about what is called as adapting digital technology for education. So now let me just briefly explain you about what is digital transformation. So digital transformation is a change associated with application of digital technology in all aspects of human society. So what does this mean? What it means is applying new approaches for innovation is what is digital transformation. And then when you say digital technology, it is adapting any of this. It could be IoT, it could be wearables, it could be mobile, or it could be any other technology that we talk about. And when we say human society, it is for all generations and all industries. So that is what is a digital transformation. So this is a definition by Wikipedia. Now, the biggest challenge that one has as far as digital transformation is concerned is because there are too many technologies. So everybody is overwhelmed with the number of technologies. Like say there are so many online platforms. Now whether I use Zoom or I use Google Meet or I use so there are hundreds of tools that are available. So hundreds of technologies that are available. So leaders are overwhelmed with these technologies. And then the things are also changing very fast. There's too much and there is too fast as well. And now what happens is, what we try and do is we always try and look at, the shiny objects. So what it means is, we always try to see what others are doing, and then, say for example, if everybody is doing online learning through Zoom, I also do that. And if somebody is doing a remote labs, or a simulation of certain laboratories, then I also do that. So basically what we try and do is we try and adapt whatever somebody is adapting, without really looking at, if that is going to be applicable in the kind of ecosystem that I'm into. So, we are always, pulled by what is called as the shiny objects. Now, why we are pulled by these shiny objects is because there is always a pressure from the customers, or when there's always a pressure from, when I say customers here, it could be students, or it could be management, or it could be, the universities. There's a pressure that we need to do certain things, right? So that is because of that, we don't know what to do. So that is why we have to adapt what is called as a mindful approach. So, how do we adapt a mindful approach for the transformation? So what is that mindful approach? Without getting into more details of this mindful approach, it's a 5-step method that we need to look at. So what is important is we have to cut through the noise. Cut through the noise when we say, don't just start looking at, what others are doing. You have to cut through the noise. In the sense, don't look at what shiny objects are there, what somebody else is doing. So don't you have to cut through that noise. So what is that you should be doing? You should be focusing on the student needs, or you should be focusing on the learner's needs. So focus on the learner's needs, and then look at what is your existing system. Look at what is your existing whatever is the system that you have. And then, meaning it's a complete landscape that you should know. And then, then try and, see what is an architecture, or, what is your current system that you have. So, try and understand what are your current processes? What is your current ecosystem? So what is your, education system today? So you look at the systems that you have today, and you also look at the processes that you have today. then once you understand this entire blueprint of the processes and the systems, then what you are trying to do, or what you're supposed to be doing, is create a vision, a cohesive vision for the future. So you need to understand what is as is state today, and based on as is state, you need to define what is called as a go-to state. You need to define a go-to state. So that is the vision. So begin with the end in mind. So when you begin with the end in mind, you keep continuously following this, so that you don't be pulled by the noise. You get through that noise, and then continuously focusing on the student, and then trying to build your vision. So once you have the vision built, then then you will be in a position to actually see what should be your path, transformation path for reaching from what is as is, or what is the current state, to the go-to state. So that is what you should be doing. I am not getting into the details, but you can always look at, or you can always Google for these things, and then you will get a lot of details on how do you apply these mindful principles. So taking a mindful approach to the digital transformation will empower your business to cut through the noise, serve your customers, and thrive in a rapidly changing digital world. So the mindful approach, when I say mindful approach, what it means is, really means that you should be mindful of everything that is existing around you. So you should be mindful of what is within you, or within your system, and what is around you. So you should be mindful of what is in your system and what is around your system. So that is what is important. So once you are mindful of it, then you will be able to build a better system. Yeah, so now with that, let me just give you a problem. Okay, so are there any questions till now? Any questions till now, please?
No, sir.
Okay, sir. So there was no disturbance, right, sir, in between?
No, sir. No, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
is one question. One
Yeah,
question.
tell me. Yeah, please.
Sir, we are always talking about learner-centric system, but
Correct.
The different number of learners are having their different style of learning.
Yes.
How can we satisfy the learner's requirement for the same context or for the
Yes.
same content? For example,
Yeah.
in a class, if there are 60 students, out of that 20's learner style is different, remaining 20's learner style is different, and remaining
Correct.
20's learner style is different. How the
Correct.
teacher can cope with that problem?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So actually, this is a good question, and a good problem to solve also. So what happens is, our thinking in this, we are thinking within the same system that we are having today. That is what we are doing is, there is a subject, mathematics, and there is a fixed curriculum, because the syllabus is fixed, and I am supposed to be, meaning I as a teacher is supposed to be learning that, and and I am as a teacher is supposed to be delivering that, and students is out of the 60 students, all 60, let us assume that all 60 are different. They have a different way of learning. So now, the problem is, if we continue to see from the same system that we are into, then we will not be able to solve that problem. So we will have to see the problem from a different point of view, or a different system. So can we change the system? That is what I was actually talking about when I said this. In this, what I am saying is, it is not just a teacher. See, there are contents. Can I have content separated out from the delivery mechanism? In the sense, I am not. See, the contents are not just coming from a teacher. It is not what is in his head. The contents are coming from, several media. That is, they could be coming from, I've just listed down certain things. It could be from audio, some audio, audio things, certain videos, certain demos, certain books, certain problems, certain solutions, certain examples, some case studies, some stories, some app notes, certain research papers, certain blogs. So, the contents. Now what is important is, now these are the various contents and the delivery mechanism. Now, delivery mechanism is the delivery is, so that is where we are talking about digital transformation. That is where we are talking about, how do we make this whole system more flexible? That is, I am, it's not the same teacher. See, the teacher could be someone who is producing this contents. And the delivery could be done by somebody else, or the delivery could be done using a different mechanism. So now what is important here is that we are supposed to be looking at how do we look at a flexible system so that these 60 students will define, the 60 students will now say, oh, okay, this is the mathematics thing, and then this is what we are supposed to be achieving. And now I want to learn this, first by seeing certain videos, next by solving certain problems, and next by doing certain assessment, which is available, or if I don't understand, I want to refer to certain reference books. Now all that is structured. So in a digital ecosystem, it's a menu that is given. It's a complete it's a complete menu which is available to them, and then it is, and then that is the students are capable of deciding how they want to actually consume it, and the system is providing that facility or flexibility, which will help them to select the way they want it. So you have to look at, sir, if you look at the current system, and then you want to solve a problem which is in this system, so then you will have to go to the next level. So you have to move to the next level to solve the problem in this level. So it's a system which is supposed to be changing. So it is about digital, it is about adapting the digital technology. So if you want to make things more flexible, then it is essential. Like, sir, let me just give you an example. I was talking to a dean of Texas A&M University in the US. So what he was telling me is, he said earlier, before the pandemic, he used to go and then take sessions. So being a dean, he used to take sessions, and then his sessions used to be for about 60 minutes or 90 minutes max. So then, post this pandemic, what he started doing was, he actually, his own, video, plus, structured with some other related videos, and given as a content to the students. And the student can go through it in any time that he wants. And there are links, because if he wants to learn certain little more, and then he can go to that. If he wants to see if he has learned it or not, then he can go to certain problems, so he could do that. So that was given. And then, so the student had an option of learning anytime, anywhere, using any device and all that. So that was the first part of the story. Then the second part of the story is, then he said that then he used to fix a time, saying that, okay, between this time to this time, I am available for discussions. So then his experience was that he said, it seems he used to conduct maximum for 90 minutes, a class, 60 to 90 minutes. And post this, even though everything is given, post this, he said his sessions started getting extended from 2 hours to 3 hours and all that. because people had come with those, already they had studied, they had understood, and then they had certain queries. So now what has happened is, different people have different ways of learning. Yes, they have learned in a different way, and they have queries, and then they are trying to sort them out. So it's a technology which is helping. So I think we need to be flexible.
Sir, I want to interrupt over here.
Mhm.
Can I?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Sir, we are talking about this digital technology and online learning, but still there is a big class of learners that they
Mhm.
want this
Mhm.
offline learning.
Yes. Yes.
Till today, we are facing that problem.
Yes, sir. I understand. Yes.
And if we talk about the learner-centric system, then what about their that group of learners? What we can say, the expectations. We are not satisfying the expectations of those group of learners, and which is a very big nowadays.
Yes, sir. See,
Due to pandemic, we are forcefully applying.
Sir, I think I mentioned that. I said the classrooms are going to come back with a big bang. And then when I talked about Byju's, I said, why did Byju's? When I talked about why Byju's acquired Akash, the reason why Akash was acquired was because you cannot do everything digitally. It has to be blended. I think I mentioned that. So here also I am mentioning here. It has to be blended learning, and the class. I am always saying that the classroom teaching will change. I am never saying, I am not saying that everything will be digital. When I say digital transformation, I am talking about the transformation in such a way that, yes, certain aspects of what was being done will also be there. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that it will go. What I am saying is it will change. There is a difference between, change and going. It will not go, it will change. So the classrooms, probably, we don't know, that is how you start looking at it. The classroom probably would become only a today, you deliver certain contents, tomorrow it could be only a discussion, sessions. So it could change that way.
Yes, sir. Nowadays, we are experiencing one thing, that this online teaching or online learning is really helpful for the self-motivated group. But the remaining group, which is not self-motivated, we have to think how to become them self-motivated. That is very important.
Correct. So that is why I said, by online learning or online teaching, I said online teaching, you are satisfying only your needs, but you never satisfied the needs of the learner. Because, like self-motivated are the only ones who are learning, like the way you said, right? Because, there are others who need motivation. So what is the
Yes.
motivation that we are giving? So
Yes.
so now when I say designing of an ecosystem, I want to design an ecosystem in such a way that it motivates everybody.
Yes, right.
So that is what I am talking about. So when I said designing an ecosystem, see, when I say learn the experience design, when I said, my topic itself says that. So we have to design our ecosystem in such a way that it actually motivates. Motivation is one part, motivation. So it satisfies the needs of the learner, or it achieves the expectations of the learner. That is how we started.
But sir, what happens?
So beginning of my
Unfortunately,
session, I said that.
what happens? Unfortunately, we are designing the ecosystem for the classes, not for the masses. That happens.
Yes, so that is what. So now, this pandemic is forcing us to change. So not only
Yes,
the
sir. Thank you.
pandemic. Yeah, so not
Yes,
only the
yes,
pandemic.
I-
In fact, the new education policy is also forcing us to change. So it is not just pandemic. Pandemic is actually helping us, and new education policy is, forcing us.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, sir.
So, yeah, so we,
Sir,
any other questions? Yeah,
I think.
yes, sir.
Is it the end, sir? Because time is already over. The next speaker is already with us.
Oh, okay. Because I didn't. I think I covered only 50%. It's okay. Then, sir, then what do we do? We'll do it some other time, or we'll take some other opportunity to get into
Sir,
the other part of my story.
Sir, how much more further time will be needed?
No, I think it will take time because I finished one part. So the second part is almost at least about half an hour to 45 minutes. So that's.
So, how much time will be needed, sir?
Let me try and finish in 10-15 minutes then, right?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, let me. What's the time now?
Sir, it's 10:45, sir. We are supposed to stop at 10:30.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then should we stop because it's already 10:45, right?
Sir, you can complete within 5 minutes, sir, and then we can stop. No problem, sir.
Okay. Anyway, let me just not get into this problem because see, in this particular problem, the problem that I was asking was, there are 3 switches on the ground floor, and then the first floor there are 3 bulbs, and then the switches are not labeled, so we don't know which switch is for which bulb. Now, it is important for us to actually find out, which, in order to find out which switch is for which bulb, how many times we'll have to go up and down, because the switches are on the ground floor and then this is on the first floor and you cannot see the bulbs. So that was the problem. So typically what happens is, when the problem is given of this kind, then when we say how many trips do you have to make, and they say how many trips, then we actually frame the problem. So when we frame this particular problem, then we get into solving that particular problem. And then when we get into a solving of a problem, then what we do is, we say normally it is 2. So you at least need 2. You have to do 2 times up and down in order to find out which switch is for which bulb. But if you think a little bit, you will find that, okay, can I use certain other properties? Is there something missing? Can I use certain properties of bulb? Like for example, the bulb gets a little heated when you keep the switch on for a longer time. So you could keep the switch on and then keep it on for about 5 minutes and then switch it off, and then switch the other on. Then when you go up, then you will find that there is one bulb which is on. So the switch which is on is for that particular bulb, and then the previous switch, which I had switched on and off, out of the 2 bulbs, I can see which is hot, and then that becomes for that, and the other one is for the third one. So basically, when we try and look at is there anything missing, so which means that in the problem we'll have to start looking at what is missing. So we'll have to start looking at that particular problem. So let me just give you a specific example and then close this. See, typically what happens is that is what I call it as problem framing. This is presume that you have an office building, and in your office building, you have several tenants. That is, there are several offices, and then the whole building belongs to you, and there are about 15-20 tenants that you have. And all those tenants have come to you, and then they are saying that the elevator is slow. And they are also actually trying to tell you that if the elevator is not made fast, they might cancel their lease. So it's a business. So you have to find a solution. So typically what you do is, when people come and complain that your elevator is slow, then you directly get into a solution finding. And when you start looking into a solution finding, you want to make the elevator faster. So what you do, you know, because it is your business, because have a powerful motor so that the lift becomes faster, or you improve the software algorithm. So this is how you start looking at a solution, just because somebody has already dictated a problem. So now, instead of looking at seeing that instead of seeing that in that way, let me look at it in a different way. See, why are people saying that the elevator is slow? Right now, the people are saying that the elevator is slow because the waiting time, either within the elevator or outside the elevator, that waiting time is annoying. So probably it is the waiting time that is annoying. That is what could be the problem, right? So instead of looking at the problem, you try to reframe that problem. So now, if the wait time is annoying, if the waiting time is a relative thing, right? So then this will become an easier problem to solve, to achieve the same thing. You want to achieve, it's all about the perception, and then you want to achieve the same thing. So the people are feeling that it is slow. Then you want to make them feel that it is faster. So what you do is, the wait could be annoying. So then what you can do is probably put the mirrors in the lift, so that people start looking at themselves, and then because there's an office anyway, so before going for a meeting and all that, they want to make sure that they are dressed properly. So mirrors would help them, or if you could be playing the music, so sometimes music could help. And if waiting for the lift outside is creating a problem, or it is becoming annoying, you could install a hand sanitizer, so that the people will use hand sanitizer before the lift comes. So now what has happened is, we have tried to reframe a problem. So we need to reframe a problem, because then this becomes an easier problem to solve. So instead of just looking at what the problem that somebody is telling us, can we relook at the problem? It's called relooking at the problem. So my second session essentially was about relooking at the problem. And that relooking at the problem, what it is called reframing of a problem. So what you can probably do is, you can Google for reframing of a problem, or relooking at the problem, or in other words, we are also talking about innovating in the problem domain. We call it as innovating in the problem domain. I was trying to look at the problem in a slightly different way. So that is what was my second part, because in the digital transformation it becomes very critical. So I suggest that you can have a look at that. You can Google for it, look at that, and then in case if you have any queries, you can always approach me. My phone number and mail ID and all are available with you people. So if somebody doesn't have, then sir is there to help you out. So with that, let me conclude, and if there are any things that you want to learn more, please connect with me. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot, sir. So during this session, we have understood so many things. We have seen the mindfulness principles. Then we have understood that the learning transformation mental model also. Yes, we are convinced learning is contextual and personalized. Transformations may be painful, but really worth, and definitely these transformations are acceptable toward the nourishment of the entire education system. The light bulb problem is really very much brainstorming. Thanks a lot, sir. So thank you very much for this another nice session, Professor Basavaraj Uli, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, we have photographs, Surone, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes. So all the participants are requested to start their videos so that we can have some steps. Bhatti madam, if done, tell.
Bhatti madam, are you there?
I'm taking snaps. Sir. Yes,
Okay, okay.
sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, we will have break for 2-3 minutes.
Sir, it's
In the
10
meantime,
hours,
ask-
54 minutes, sir.
Huh?
It's
Yes.
10 hours, 54 minutes.
Yes, sir. We will have break for 2-3 minutes and ask Naik, sir.
Naik,
Request him.
sir, please unmute.